Welcome to Sports Beat KC, the Kansas City Star sports podcast sponsored by Big O Tires. I'm your host, Blair Kirchhoff, and it's Monday, August 26th. On today's show, college football, which is celebrating its 150th birthday this season, begins in earnest this weekend. How will the area Division I programs fare? We pose that question to the folks who cover the teams. Alex Schiffer on Missouri, Kellis Robinett on Kansas State, and Jesse Newell on Kansas. They'll share with us a projected final record and the path to that record. But first, there was breaking news on Chiefs front today. When Chiefs trainer Rick Burkhalter steps to the podium, he's usually not bringing good news.
All right, a couple updates from the last two games. So Marcus Kemp, has been placed on injury reserve. In the Pittsburgh game, he tore his left knee ACL, MCL, and has a meniscal injury. He'll have surgery tomorrow with Dr. Dan Cooper in Dallas. So that's Kemp. From the Pittsburgh game also, Breeland Speaks injured his right knee, MCL sprain, and a meniscal injury. He will have surgery tomorrow in Houston with Dr. Walter Lowe. And then from the 49ers game Saturday night, Chad Henne has a right high ankle sprain and a fractured ankle. He will have surgery tomorrow with Dr. Robert Anderson in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I know you have questions about what that means for the roster. That's not my deal. Coach speaks tomorrow, and I'm sure him and Brett Veach will get together on that. Thank you.
Based on what was known outside the practice facility inner sanctum before Monday, here's where I'd rank the information on the surprise meter. 1 being not surprising, 10 very surprising. I'd give Marcus Kemp a 1. We knew about the ACL, MCL, and the severity of that injury. Breeland Speaks, I'd give that a 6. When Tano Passanio fell on Speaks in the previous week's game at Pittsburgh, he didn't return, and obviously there was a problem. But Andy Reid was somewhat vague about the injury during the week. In fact, at one point he said, "Hey, I'm not a doctor." So that was a little bit of a surprise. Well, then came today's news. Chad Henne, the reserve quarterback, out with a high right ankle sprain and ankle fracture. I'd give this one a 9. This occurred in the 49ers game on Saturday, and it happened on his only series of the game. Henne had replaced Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs' third series early in the second quarter, and when Henne got sacked, he got up slowly and started limping, and today we found out why. We don't know the length of the absence of any of the players. I think we'll learn that on Tuesday. But the Chiefs have already made moves in response to the injuries. After Kemp went down, they brought in old friend DeAnthony Thomas and plugged him into some of Kemp's special teams duties. In fact, Thomas got the game's first tackle on a kickoff return against the 49ers on Saturday. Henne's absence left the Chiefs with 2 quarterbacks, undrafted rookie free agent Kyle Shermer, who was the next man up in Saturday's game, and second-year pro Chase Litton, who spent last season on the Chiefs' practice squad. Of those 2, I've been more impressed with Shermer, although Litton has better preseason stats. But the Chiefs weren't going to continue with just 3 quarterbacks on the roster. On Monday, we learned that the Chiefs are going to sign veteran Matt Moore. He's played 10 NFL seasons, mostly as a reserve, the first 4 with the Carolina Panthers, the other 6 with the Miami Dolphins. He was out of football last year. Moore's most productive season came in 2011 when he started 12 games because of an injury to none other than Chad Henne. His highest profile game came after the 2015 season when an injury to starter Ryan Tannehill got Moore the start in the Dolphins' first playoff game in 8 years at Pittsburgh. The Steelers won, but Moore completed 80% of his passes for nearly 300 yards. It's not unusual for Andy Reid to summon a veteran quarterback for roster depth. Remember in 2016, he brought in Nick Foles to back up Alex Smith, and Foles proved valuable that year, finishing off one victory and serving as the starter in another when Smith went down with a head injury. I believe it was at Indianapolis. One thing I know, or at least I think I know, no Chiefs starters will be lost to injury in this week's game. That's because none are expected to play against the Packers, which is traditional for a 4th preseason game. Hey, listen, after this break, we'll be back to talk about the opening weekend of college football and hear how the Star's beat writers project their team's final records.
The biggest tire sale of the year could only happen at Big O Tires, but you've only got 2 weeks to get 2 free tires. That's right, 2 free tires when you buy 2 now at Big O Tires through September 9th. Just buy 2 select tires and you'll receive 2 free with the purchase of a 1-year alignment and tire protection package. That's half off your tires at Big O Tires. It's the biggest tire sale of the year through September 9th only. Buy 2 tires, get 2 free. Now at Big O Tires. Big on service, guaranteed low prices. For the location nearest you, go to bigotires.com.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/sportsbeatkc offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. College football season begins in full swing Saturday. Actually, the whole weekend full of college football action, but that includes the local Kansas City schools, Missouri, Kansas State, and Kansas. And we're going to talk about all 3 of them and their prospects on today's show. We start with the Missouri Tigers. Alex Schiffer, who covers Mizzou for the Kansas City Star and kansascity.com, joins us. And Alex, I got to say, I saw your predictions in the paper this weekend, and you are optimistic. Although I've seen that same record projected by other people, 10-2. Just give me a brief reasoning how you got to that record.
Yeah, I just when I kept looking at the teams and the way Missouri's schedule falls, I just didn't have a really good reason except for being maybe too optimistic to pick against them in every game except Georgia and Florida. And even, the way Florida played the other night changed my mind. There'll be plenty of chances for them to kind of rechange my mind. But I just, they should be favored in 10 or 11 games. Obviously, it's very hard for a team to win every game they're favored in. But you look at the teams they subbed out compared to last season. Ole Miss in the SEC West from Alabama. West Virginia's a little down. I had 2 schools with coaching changes in Troy and West Virginia. I just had a hard time going against them based on how they should play and what those schools should be.
So, if I saw your game-by-game prediction as well, Tigers started the season, or at least they're going to start the season outside the top 25 in the Associated Press poll. I believe they're the first team out. But they have an opportunity to climb deep inside the poll if things break the way you suspect, and really the way a lot of people believe it could for Missouri by the time they reach those back-to-back games with Georgia and Florida, and they are back-to-back games. That could be, you could be looking at a Missouri team that hadn't lost in a couple of months.
Yeah, no, I think, and I have a vote in the AP this year. I had them 20th in my preseason poll. I think if they win against Wyoming and maybe a team or 2 in the late 20s goes down, they can sneak in for next week's poll. And I think if they beat West Virginia next Saturday, they're a lock at 2-0 with a win like that to get in. So I think that they could very well be 8-0 going into Georgia come November, and it being a top 10 matchup with College Game Day there under the lights on ABC, the whole 9 yards.
What's this team's greatest strength?
That's a good question. I would say the tight end position, because I think that that's the position where they have the most dudes instead of just guys. They have Albert O was there, who might be the best tight end in the country. I know those are their millennial phrase I just used on you. Daniel Parker from Blue Springs was an all-SEC freshman tight end. They're very high on Isaiah Swinson, who's behind those 2. And Nico Hay from CBC in St. Louis, who's going to burn the red shirt. Very late offer. They offered him in December. He was mostly hearing from MAC schools, and now he's going to play as a true freshman in the SEC. So I think that that's the position where they have the most proven guys, and the rest just have some guys that I'd say running back would be the second place team for that, having Larry Roundtree and Tyler Beatty. But I think that tight end has the most immediate contributors.
I know we've talked about the secondary and the corners as a place of, I don't know, not concern's too strong a word, but just maybe to keep an eye on early. Has anything in fall camp changed your mind about that?
No, it's tough really with assessing the defense just because they've gone from a 4-3 to a 4-2-5, which a lot of college teams have done with the way that the spread concepts in college have kind of been continued to be adapted and more pass heavy. And they had 3 elder statesmen at linebacker last year. They lost 2 to graduation. It's really kind of tough to pick a strong point for this defense or a weak point because I think that there's a number of positions that could be the strength or could be the weakness. But it's there's so many reasons you could go on either side.
Well, either way, I think this is going to be a good year. I think it's Barry Odom's best team entering a season. And that's saying a lot. He's had some good teams in his short tenure in Columbia. Hey, Alex, we haven't spoken since the NCAA ruled on Mississippi State when they announced sanctions for the violations that included students who had completed coursework. The tutor who had completed coursework for the students, that included 10 football players. Mississippi State got 3 years probation, got hit with some recruiting restrictions and scholarship reductions, but not a bowl ban. Missouri was given the bowl ban after the Tigers were found to have tutor complete classwork for some of their student athletes, including football players. A little bit different between the cases, but there's enough similarities there that a lot of Missouri people, a lot of fans and people interested in Missouri are wondering if there was is there a hint of what might be coming toward Missouri, which has appealed its bowl ban and is maybe expected to know something pretty soon. Is there a hint in that Mississippi State ruling that could be favorable to Mizzou?
Yeah, I think possibly, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this too, but my whole thing on it, they're a little different in that the tutor was taking money at Mississippi State to do coursework, and it seems like Missouri's was a little more on doing it on her own based on what the paperwork says and everything. But, I think, and obviously Mississippi State benefited from an NCAA rule that was passed after Missouri was already in the process for their investigation that essentially allows schools to kind of reach a plea deal with the NCAA. I think it would be a very bad look for the NCAA to kind of let Mississippi State walk away relatively unscathed in the postseason ban department and have Missouri still kind of stick with their original punishment. And it makes me wonder, with Missouri's obviously gone to the appeals committee and everything, is the appeals committee going to tailor more toward a Mississippi State type ruling and dock some official visits and scholarships? So no, I think that, I had my bold predictions for the season that the bowl ban wouldn't get overturned. I wrote that before Friday's news. I would have probably flipped it had I seen Friday's ruling, but I just have a hard time seeing the NCAA get away with this unscathed if they let Mississippi State get away with very similar punishments. Yeah,
I think there's enough, even though there are some differences, there are enough similarities here. The crux of the issue is the same, right? Yes. Football players who received improper aid from a tutor. There's enough similarity there that I do think that the appeals committee has to take a hard look at that, and I'm with you. My feeling has changed on this. I didn't think that the NCAA would overturn it. I just thought that it falls. I remember what the original spokesperson said when the punishment was announced about how it fell within the parameters of the punishment matrix. But now they've made a ruling, and now there's a hint out there that you can compare this to. It's gone from a 40-60 proposition to me to closer to 50-50 that Missouri gets a favorable ruling here, and for Missouri's sake and for the sake of everybody who's interested in the story, I hope it comes pretty soon. Let's close on this, Alex. What either way, does this have an impact on the way Missouri approaches the season, plays the season? I think Barry Odom's done a terrific job of managing this story.
Yeah, I think that the ruling itself and its effect on the team is the biggest storyline of the season, and it's a thing that nobody can predict. I mean, does Missouri find out that the bowl ban is upheld, all the air comes out of the season, and they struggle and they don't win as many games as they should? Does it have an opposite effect of them getting the ban lifted and they play out of their minds the rest of the year, and we're potentially booking flights to Atlanta for the first week of December or something like that? Does it have a quick, effect where they find out shortly before a game and it's too much of a distraction, they lose that game, or vice versa? I think it absolutely will affect how the season goes, because I think that's the thing we have no idea how it will impact, is what the ruling is, and is the team able to kind of push it aside and not really deal with it, or does it become this bigger presence for good or bad as time goes on?
All right, well, it's certainly a story that you need to follow and stay tuned for, and we will be watching and following your coverage, Alex, of the Tigers, who traveled to Wyoming on Saturday for the season opener, in a season in which Alex Schiffer, who covers the Tigers for the Kansas City Star, believes will be a very successful one for Mizzou. All right, Schiff, good talking to you, and we will chat again soon.
Sounds good, Blair. Take care.
We head over to the Little Apple, Manhattan, Kansas, where we talk to Kellis Robinett, who writes all things K-State for the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle. And Kellis, let me ask you this. What kind of record is it going to take for the Wildcats faithful to call it good in Chris Kleiman's first year?
Probably 6-6. I mean, there are some people who are shooting higher. I've had some people suggest, it would take 7 or 8, but I don't buy that. I think most people understand that the team went 5-7 last year, and that there was a reason that a new coaching staff is here, and it's not because things were going perfectly last season and there are some holes in the roster. So I think people more or less realize that, this team isn't going undefeated, but at the same time, K-State fans have high expectations. So they're not going to be okay with 2-10 or 3-9 or anything like that. But I think, 5 wins, think people would understand. They matched last season, did what they could do, but 6-6 would be, I think, the mark. I think everybody at least wants to get back to that bowl game. Right.
If you're a Kansas State fan, you were so disappointed last year that you didn't go bowling for the first time in 9 seasons. They'd gone 8 straight under Bill Snyder. So 6-6, does that give them? That probably puts them, 5-4, 4-5, 4-5. I would imagine in conference play. Since Mississippi State is on the schedule as well, that's going to be a tough game for the Wildcats when they have to go down to Starkville. So is that kind of what you're seeing? Maybe 4-5 in the league?
Yeah, I'm thinking they go 2-1 non-conference, beat Nickel. Don't quite pull out a win at Mississippi State, and then find a way to win 4 in conference. I actually think that'd be a pretty decent start, just because to even get to that, they'd have to beat some pretty decent teams, somebody like Iowa State, Oklahoma State, TCU, Baylor. You probably aren't expecting them to beat Oklahoma, Texas, or Mississippi State this year, but I think they've got enough firepower to win 2, maybe 3 of those toss-up games. And so that's where I think they can be right around 500 in league play. Yeah, and
if they go 4-5, that means they would have beaten a couple teams that are projected, at least in the preseason poll, to finish ahead of them, based on the ninth place pick, only ahead of KU. So it's tough to. The Big 12 after Oklahoma, I think, deserves to be the choice at the top. And I think in some order, Texas and Iowa State next. But then it's, to me, a jumble of schools with TCU, Oklahoma State, Baylor, Texas Tech with its new coach, West Virginia with a new coach, and K-State after that. KU, I think, is kind of locked into the 10th spot. But we'll talk to Jesse Newell about that in a moment. They would have to pick up a win or two that maybe they're not expected to. But we got used to that under Bill Snyder. I think that would make fans happy to see Chris Kleiman knock off a team, maybe one on the road or one in which they're an underdog. That's something we've seen Kansas State do in the past.
Yeah, and it was the game I've kind of circled is what I think will be their most likely upset is at Oklahoma State, and that's because they pulled off a big upset the last time they went to Stillwater 2 years ago. Skylar Thompson went there as a freshman and had almost 300 yards of offense, 4 touchdowns. And Kansas State won a game where they were underdogs by 20-plus points, one of their biggest upset victories they've had in a long time against a top 10 team. And I think that will actually, help them, that they've got a quarterback who's been in that environment and won. And K-State beat Oklahoma State last year, too. So I think that's the type of game that they could pull off. It's just kind of some of the other ones, like Mississippi State, Oklahoma, seeing how severely they outplayed Kansas State last year. I'm still a little hesitant to say Kansas State can go and beat those teams. But I do think that given Chris Kleiman's record of success at North Dakota State, I think he'll definitely have a chance in a lot of those other games.
I remember that game at Oklahoma State a couple of years ago as the Byron Pringle game.
That's right.
He got into the end zone for the Chiefs on Saturday night in their preseason game against the 49ers. He had 4 touchdowns in that game, 3 receiving and 1 as a kickoff return. His best game as a collegian that night. Hey, Kellis, I wanted to ask you about something else. I read this in a story that you had written last week. Chris Kleiman kind of turned some heads with the choice of wallpaper. I know that in my house, I don't notice the wallpaper that much, but I guess if you're in the Kansas State football complex, you do notice things like this. Tell us about the change in decor in the football complex.
Yeah, so in their main meeting room where they come and watch film and have the biggest team meetings, on the front left wall where the Bill Snyder's 16 Rules of Success used to rest, now that's gone, and now the slogan for the season, Pound the Stone, is there. And it's interesting because I feel like just about anywhere else in America, when a new coach comes in, it's pretty much expected that he's not going to go by the mottos and slogans and in ways that the last coach did. But maybe that's just a little bit different here, considering that the old guy's name is actually on the stadium and he's got a statue outside. But yeah, it was just kind of interesting that people were like, whoa, what happened to the 16 goals here? We don't, put the Pound the Stone up somewhere else, but don't replace that. I found that kind of interesting. People were, at least a contingent of people were saying, hey, what happened here? But I think that just kind of shows you that he's not afraid to put his own stamp on things. Because if there was one thing that you would say, could linger on from the Snyder era with this team, maybe it's that. The 16 goals served him really well over the years, but I think it's a good sign, because it shows that he's going to be his own man and coach his way. And like I kind of wrote in that article, I'm not totally sure that happened fully when Ron Prince took over. I think, especially back then with Bill Snyder keeping an office in the complex and his son being a full-time member of the coaching staff and everything, I think there was that Ron Prince certainly didn't excel for a number of reasons, but I just kind of always thought that hampered things a little bit, and I definitely noticed this time that there's kind of a little bit more of a clean break there, if you know what I mean.
Right. Okay, so the Wildcats open Saturday. Nichols is the opponent, and Kellis, we look forward to reading your stuff, and we will talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks so much, Blair.
We head over to Lawrence now to talk to Jesse Newell, who covers Kansas for the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle, and he put his 2019 prediction out there for all to see. Jesse, how'd you pick the Jayhawks record-wise this year?
I picked them at 2-10, Blair, and maybe it shouldn't have been for all to see based off of the reaction that I got this morning when people were able to see that. But as you know, it's difficult because KU has gone through so many new coaches, and there's optimism with the new coaches, and there should be optimism that maybe things can change around. But there are also a lot of realities about the job that make this very difficult for Les Miles and staff, even if a turnaround is going to come here soon. So 2-10 is what I started with, and we'll see. Kind of like as they always say, the cliche in the industry, we'll see if they prove me wrong.
Well, and I'll remind people that if that sounds pessimistic, consider that a 2-10 record would match or surpass the victory total for the Jayhawks in 6 of the last 9 years, which is to say,
crazy.
In those years, 0, 1, or 2 victories And over the last 8 seasons, KU has averaged 1.9 victories per season. So if they get to number 2, they'll have beaten their average over the last 8 seasons. Hey, so there was some news earlier this week on the quarterback situation, which is to say, stay tuned. We don't know who the starter is going to be between veteran Carter Stanley and newcomer Thomas McVitie. What do you think that's about, Jesse?
Well, I think it's kind of what we've been talking about the last few weeks, and so this is not a huge shock, but just to kind of recap for the people that are tuning in now, and that should be a lot of people since it is game week and people are starting to really pay attention to the program. Thomas McVitie came in as a junior college quarterback. KU has a lot invested in him. He's a guy that started his career at Pittsburgh as a quarterback and then moved off the position, went to Mesa Junior College in Arizona, was one of the top recruits out there available in junior college. But for Kansas to take him with one of their precious few scholarships they had last year, David Beatty kind of used a bunch of different ones in advance by blue shirting people. So Les Miles and staff only got really 15 true scholarships to use in the 2019 class. To use one on a junior college quarterback who only has 2 years of eligibility remaining, that means you're giving him a lot of commitment. So Les Miles said a month ago at Big Media Days that McVitie had the edge over incumbent Carter Stanley, who's been with the program now for 4 years. But the fact that this thing has dragged on, and now that Les Miles has said that they're not going to announce a starter before the game starts, it says to me that Carter Stanley has not only closed that gap, he probably has maybe even looked better in practices than Thomas McVitie has at certain points. And so Les Miles even said that they might play both quarterbacks. It seems to me like he also said they're going to evaluate here until late in the week to see who they like in that spot better. But in an ideal world, I mean, if we're being completely honest, I don't think this is what anybody would want, is to have a 2-quarterback system. I think they really are sort of torn between the guy they sort of would like to win the job in Thomas McVitie because he would represent a fresh start, and then Carter Stanley, who frankly might just be out there earning the job just because of the play that he's had here in practices and how he's impressed coaches so far. But we've talked about this so much, which is, hey, you got to get this right because KU starts with Indiana State on Saturday, an FCS team that's ranked. And if you look at the Vegas lines, KU's only a 4.5-point favorite in this game. So this isn't something you can kind of dip your toe into. This isn't something where KU gets a bunch of, long grace period. They've got to get this quarterback right from the start because their 2 most winnable games here are here in the first 2 weeks.
Right, and Kansas has lost opening games to FCS opponents in the recent past, including last season.
Yeah, very recent. Exactly, yeah. Last year, Nicholls State, who K-State is actually playing in the season opener this year. KU lost that game. It's been 2 of the last 4 years, if you remember. Also, David Beatty's first game against South Dakota State. That was another game they fell way behind at halftime, made a little bit of a comeback, but KU lost that game to the Jackrabbits as an FCS team. And then Turner Gill lost to North Dakota. I mean, everybody lost to North Dakota, it seemed like back in the day, if we want to bring back these K-State ties. North Dakota State. But yeah, it's crazy because it feels like there's been a lot of good vibes with Kansas football, and a lot has been built up over this offseason. And Les Miles has done a great job with recruiting and getting people excited about the program, and the season ticket numbers are up, and people want to go out there and cheer for a winner. But again, this is sort of the week where the road meets the rubber and where the reality kind of kicks in. And so Kansas really, really, however it happens, needs to get a win in this game 1 to kind of keep some of that momentum rolling and keep things heading in the right direction and try to keep some of these recruits that have already signed up and said, hey, we believe in you, Les Miles. We believe in the vision that's coming to this program.
All right, so what strengths does this KU football team have? When you project a 2-10 team, I think you can pretty much identify weaknesses across the board. But where are this team's strengths?
Well, absolutely. You start with the secondary. They have guys there that even if you're not diehard KU football fan, you should have heard of just because of the contributions they've made over time. Bryce Tornaden is a local kid from Lawrence Free State. He's developed into one of their best players as a team captain, a senior now. Mike Lee, a safety from the New Orleans area, the first of the Louisianimals to commit to Kansas. He was a freshman All-American from Rivals back his first year. Corian Harris followed Mike Lee, he's a sophomore cornerback and also was a 4-star recruit out of high school, one of the best recruits that David Beatty brought in. And so you add all those guys together. Davon Ferguson, they're expecting a lot out of him. He had a big spring game. Jeremiah McCullough is another guy you look at, and he is first on the depth chart, so he should be able to help them out. And Hassan Defense is a guy that throughout time has helped them at cornerback and kind of been a mainstay there. So you start with those guys and a lot of faces returning, a lot of experience, and a lot of optimism about that particular group. You also move on the offensive side of the ball. I think they like their offensive line, and they also, running backs wise, should definitely like what they have there, because Puka Williams comes back as a first-team Big 12 player. That doesn't happen at Kansas very often. And then the depth behind him. Khalil Herbert has been a contributor ever since his true freshman year and has done that for 3 years. And Dom Williams has some potential too. He's a former top 10 running back in the state of Texas history, which you got to be a great runner to finish top 10 in anything in the state of Texas when it comes to high school football. So I think you start with those three position groups. Running back, they like their offensive linemen and some of the depth and experience they bring back, and then definitely the secondary, where they have a lot of different guys you can rely upon and that have contributed in the past. Outside of that, there might be some question marks in some other areas, but those are the ones you would start with to say, hey, if Katie's going to have a good season, it's really going to start with those guys.
And just a reminder, Puka Williams won't play this weekend, serving the one-game suspension. He pulls on the pads for Coastal Carolina in week 2, I believe.
That's right. And also, they brought in another guy, Malcolm Lee, on the defensive line, which defensive line is one of those big question marks for them. He also will be sitting out this first game as part of a suspension. He was arrested on suspicion of DUI over the offseason too. So KU will be shorthanded in a couple ways because of some of these, off-season sort of punishment type things, and that might be figured into that number when I talk about, hey, KU's a 4.5-point favorite against Indiana State, which is ranked 16th in the FCS poll. But once again, I think the perception, even with as bad as KU football has been, has been that, hey, this is a team that KU should beat pretty easily. I'm not convinced that's the case based off what Vegas says. And like I said, Kansas, no matter what happens here, they've got to figure out a way. Ugly, not ugly, blowout, not blowout. They got to figure out a way to win this game.
Right. Just get the W, I think, is the order of the weekend for Kansas. All right, Jesse, thanks for spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate it, Blair.
Links to the college football stories we discussed can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Additionally, Chief stories can be found at facebook.com/RedZoneExtra and the Red Zone Extra app. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, help us out by rating and reviewing SportsBeat KC. We'd love to hear from you, and your review can help us reach more listeners. Thanks in advance. Big thanks to the editing skills of our producer, Leah Becerra, and a shout-out to our sponsor, Big O Tires. And speaking of the Big O, on Tuesday, the Stars A-Team will be live from Big O Tires in Independence, 4011 South Bolger Road, starting at 11 a.m. Come out and see us and say hello. This has been SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City. Thanks for listening.